Once upon a time, in a small town way up north, all the free stores closed. The much-loved Salvation Army used clothing store also closed, leaving the people in this northern town with nowhere to get free or inexpensive used clothing or housewares for themselves and their families. This was, in fact, a crisis. Many people in this small northern town could not afford to buy new shirts and jackets. Others realized that there is an environmental cost to buying only new clothing. There were still, of course, those who continued to shop online and at the big chain stores for clothing that was cheaply made, mass-produced, and constructed of fabrics such as polyester and other synthetic fibers that take many years to decompose once they reach the landfill. And they do tend to reach the landfill fairly quickly because they aren't made to last. After a winter of pondering this situation, some folks in this small northern town got together to talk about what to do. They were pretty sure that there was lots of good used clothing and stuff available, as many of the folks in this small northern town are fashion conscious and like to look good. In fact, like the average Canadian, many like to throw out as much as 80 pounds of clothing a year. This group of practical northerners put their heads together and decided to collect up all the used clothing they could find and set up a pop-up booth at the trade show in May 2018. Well, that pop-up was a roaring success, and they sold a lot of clothing, both to people who needed it and to others who simply like to give clothing a second life or find a bargain. That summer, this creative group of northern folks bargained for some unused space in the old Canadian Tire building and collected a bunch more used clothing. The residents of this small northern town were anxious to share what they no longer needed, so donations of shoes, books, kitchenware, and more poured in. Saturdays and Sundays over the summer, open space in the Canadian Tire building became a lively garage sale event. It seemed that the more used goods were offered, the more people wanted. In fact, one night, when everything was on sale for a toonie, there was a crowd lined up at the door waiting to get in. This brave group of thrifters soon realized that they were onto something good and that it was time for a permanent location and a bit more room. By this time, due to funding and support from the community, they had enough money in the bank to take the next step, form a proper society, and rent their own space. And so, in September 2018, they moved into the Love2Thrift store at the Yukon Plaza. Well, northern folks are a smart bunch. They kept buying the great used clothing and housewares that the generous people of Whitehorse donated, sometimes in amounts that were just a bit overwhelming. The store kept making money and the society kept socking it away in the bank. They knew they would eventually want to share the fruits of their success, but wanted to make sure the store could survive if things took a downturn. They were in uncharted waters after all. Things didn't so much take a downturn as hit a major crisis. When COVID-19 arrived, the store had to be closed. But that didn't stop this group of innovative northerners. They put on their thinking caps and figured out that they could afford to stay closed for a bit. They also realized that while they were closed, they could continue to take donations from the generous folks of Whitehorse, who had a lot of time to clean out their closets and garages while stuck in their cluttered homes due to the pandemic. This creative group figured out how to take donations without making contact, by inviting people to stop by the store and place their treasures in the store's well-marked thrift mobile. This worked well. Yukoners stuck at home did lots of decluttering, and soon the thrift store's storage lockers were filled to the brim. By the summer of 2020, the store was able to reopen with all of the usual COVID protocols in place. Despite the restrictions, people were happy to be out and about again, and it wasn't unusual to see a lineup outside the store of folks waiting to get in. There were few complaints. Once people got into the store, there was lots of good stuff to check out. Hey, let's take a short walk through the store to see what's happening now. And so the little thrift store that could, did. And it certainly didn't do it all by itself. It has had many partners and supporters in the community, both for project funding and to ensure that as much of the good stuff as possible gets to where it is needed. It has partnerships with Raven Recycling, the Whitehorse Firefighters Charitable Society, the Anti-Poverty Coalition, Changing Gears, Zero Waste Yukon, Victoria Faulkner Women's Centre, and the May Batcher Humane Society, to name a few. The little thrift store that could has now been operating for 3 years. It has money in the bank and a steady influx of both donations and customers. During National Waste Reduction Week in October, Love2Thrift launched an education campaign and a program to share its financial success. The education campaign encourages the citizens of this northern town to be both thrifty and wise, and to keep the planet in mind when making choices about what clothes to buy and where. The Sharing Our Success SOS program will send funds from the store's profits back into the community that has supported it over the past 3 years. It is an exciting time, and the people of this small northern town should be proud of the steps that they are taking to reduce their impact on the planet, by making wiser, more environmentally aware choices, by learning about the real cost of clothing and other goods and buying secondhand, and by knowing they are contributing to good things in both the community and on the planet.